Lovely. And Petter, Jerome, thank you for joining us. Today's session is all about talking to Tameem, who is the author of Becoming a Salesforce Certified Technical Architect, which is a fantastic book, which I have my copy of here to hand for all the situations that I need it for. You can see an awful lot of work's gone into this book. So today is all about talking to the man himself who wrote the book, understanding a little bit more about his learnings and his journey, and yeah, a little bit more about how we can use this book to help us in all of our learning endeavors. So Tameem, over to you. Tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, hello, Jamal. Hello, everyone. My name is Tameem. I'm based in the UK. I have around 17 years of experience in software development, and then transitioned to Salesforce. So it's something like 11 years, or something like around 11 years in Salesforce, plus around 6 in software development in general. So I'm a Salesforce CTA. I'm currently leading the Salesforce CTO office for Europe at Capgemini. I'm also leading the initiative of mentoring and preparing our next gen of CTAs within Capgemini. So this is a very ambitious program that we initiated around a year and a half ago, aiming at preparing our next gen CTAs. So we have a mentorship program, and we all kind of activities around it. Previously, I've established something similar in my previous place. So I worked at Accenture before, and yeah, established something similar for Europe as well over there. Glad to be here. Glad that that you are inviting me to this session to talk about the book.
Honestly, it's fantastic to have you with us, Tameem. Very well respected and admired CTA around the globe, really. So it's fantastic to have you with us to share a little bit about your experience. So obviously this is the book we're talking about. Tell us a little bit about in terms of your own journey. Why did you choose Salesforce? Why was it important to you to continue working with the platform throughout your career?
That's a very cool question. I like to talk about that point. So I actually had to switch to Salesforce at some stage, because I was working for, at that time, I was working for a client who decided to move on to Salesforce. So I had to do the switch the hard way. But then, with time, you figure out that, well, this is a really cool platform. I mean, coming from software development background, we used to develop everything from scratch. We used to, have no limits of what the things that can be built. And then you switch to something that, or a platform that promotes pre-built materials, promotes pre-built solutions, and kind of, trying to also promote a point and click over code development for very obvious reasons. So moving to this platform wasn't really easy, because at the beginning, I had some resistance. But eventually, when you find out how, in my opinion, my personal opinion, how good this platform has been developed, how good it has been architected, the new principles that has been introduced to abstract some of the common functionalities that you used to develop. Think of people coming from software development background may recall the efforts we used to put to create data access layers, just to access the database in a consistent manner, in a easy to maintain fashion, that sort of things, and reusable components. And that is all kind of given for granted in Salesforce. It's a much much more easy to develop, actually, some specific set of applications, not all applications, but specific set of applications on Salesforce, because you get a lot of things out of the box. With time, you also learn to, leave back at home some of the old habits that, we can develop everything, we can custom build the entire world. You start to learn that, well, perhaps there's something that has been already done by someone else. Perhaps there's a wheel that has been already invented, and then you try to reuse that. You learn how to use the platform capabilities workflows, the olden days flows and process builder later on. So you learn that point and click tools are not actually bad. So perhaps, yeah, they add value, and you kind of try to move away from the developer mindset into the Salesforce platform world.
And what was it that made you, what was the defining moment or job or project that made you realize that you were operating at a slightly different level to the one you were before as a developer, and you'd started to move into that wider thinking?
So it's not a single project, I would say. It's, like once you operate, once you get involved in multiple projects, Salesforce projects, you get to learn, like kind of the best practices within that platform. You get to learn the new things over there, and with time, you just are gonna start getting better and better. And eventually, you start to read more. You get more involved in the community. Again, from where I came from, it's a different experience. So it was, focusing on. I came from a .NET background, focusing on .NET, and then switching on to find out that, oh, okay, there's a whole community now here. There's a Salesforce partner community, and there's all these kind of activities. And today it's much wider than it was 10 or 11 years ago. So it's a whole new journey, but I found it interesting, and I found it rewarding. The Salesforce platform and like the whole ecosystem is just keeps growing in a very rapid scale. It's again, even from a development background, it's a platform that is easy to work with. Some developers might find it a little bit difficult to deal with, considering the governor limits and all these kind of things. But in my opinion, these things are there for a reason. They kind of enforce writing code in a good fashion. There's nothing that can go under the carpet here. They have to write it well, or otherwise it's going to break eventually, or going to hit any of these governor limits. So it's a new experience, I guess.
And how long did it take you to become sort of, when I mean, you mentioned before you had a .NET background. What's the what are the best learnings that you feel you brought into Salesforce that .NET background has prepared you for, has brought? Yeah,
it wasn't just .NET. So I worked also with other programming languages, but I think the key kind of learnings that you'd probably need to extend your knowledge to while being in the Salesforce world is more about what is around Salesforce ecosystem. So this is also something I've noticed while coaching some of the CTA candidates, particularly those who came from straight from college or from universities directly to Salesforce world. So they didn't get to work with any other technologies. They just straight to Salesforce. Eventually, you need to build that wider knowledge around what's around Salesforce. What are the best practices in data modeling, for example? What are the best practices in security, encryption? You need to learn these things in order to move on further in your career, and like particularly to the CTA level, to understand how these things operate on a lower level, to be able to guess how they will operate on a higher level. In many occasions, you might come across a situation where you don't necessarily know the answer for a particular challenge, but because you have the background, because you have the underlying required knowledge, you can guess the right answer because you know how these things normally fit together. So you can assume that, yeah, well, if I assume this and if I assume that, then this is how I believe things are going to go. And in most cases, you could be right.
Yeah, and that's interesting as well, because I mean, myself, I grew up in Salesforce. I'm one of those people that I did an IT degree. I did business information systems at a local university to you and I at Northampton for a few years. And so I worked with SQL, mostly performing queries, pulling out data for local exam boards in Coventry and helping them to analyze their statistics before I then moved into sales ops. And they said, oh, we've got this system that you can report from. It's called Salesforce. So I grew up, yes, I studied IT. So I had advanced databases under my belt, project management, systems development, lifecycle training, etc. Throughout university, but then applying it to Salesforce was very different. On one hand, it helped me to cement the learning I'd had about advanced databases in RDBMS. And then when I looked at Salesforce and realized that actually this is different to what I've ever had to do, like what? All these tables have owners? What's that all about? So learning the structure was interesting enough. But then growing up in Salesforce, you're right. Certainly in my own experience attempting the review board, I found that the learning curve was a lot steeper because I didn't know all that deep network detail that I would need in order to understand things like OAuth better. So
and
it's interesting.
It's exactly as you describe it. Sometimes you're gonna come across some principles that are considered a major no-go in RDBMS, for example, but are okay to do in Salesforce. Actually, you might be encouraged to do it in some occasions. Also, you need to think of the capabilities you get with SQL compared to what you get with SQL. So the increased capability is kind of sacrificed or limited for a more easy way to deal with data and to create queries. So these are things that you probably need to think about. So in the book, I have actually like the first 3 or 4 chapters in the book are particularly discussing these topics, particularly like kind of closing the gaps that I noticed common in the candidates who didn't come from technology backgrounds or from like years of experience in other places or with other technologies.
I actually found that section particularly interesting. We'll get onto the book in a bit more detail in just a moment, but I just to call that out as well, what I found useful about that was how there's so much variation out there in the artifacts we produce as architects. One person's data model might look very different to another's, and certainly interviewing architects as well, I've seen a whole array of different data model styles that are out there, and that usually includes the primary notation, but can sometimes show a lack of full understanding around how much information needs to be on that diagram. And it's important for us because we're producing these artifacts for our customers and for our stakeholders internally. So having that consistency and having an understanding of what is best practice for the diagrams that we produce, I found that particular section of the book really useful. You talk about naming conventions. You talk about what should be on an ERD, what should be, what's the difference between a functional diagram. I'm one of those that's very guilty of just throwing boxes onto a lucid chart, but then somehow it turns out making sense at the end. But that's because of stuff I've learned over the years, just throwing things around and trying to convey ideas usefully. But I found that particularly useful. So Tameem, the book, right? Really excited. Love this book. Tell us what inspired you to write it.
It's an interesting part because, as I mentioned, I have been doing these mentoring sessions for a while, and eventually I found that I'm repeating specific areas over and over again. So I thought maybe I can create this as some sort of reusable document. And then the idea of the book came to my mind, but I just thought, well, that's a lot of work, and do I want to actually go there? Do I want to go ahead and start writing a book about this? I thought that what the candidates would normally find useful is if they can get some sort of hands-on experience, if they can get the gaps, the common gaps closed first. And then if they can get some hands-on experience with some mock scenarios. I particularly found mock scenarios as a very good way to learn and to prepare for the CTA review board when I was preparing to. So I thought, well, if the people can get these two things, perhaps they will get a better chance in passing the review board. But well, writing a book, that sounded a lot of effort. So I said, well, yeah, I don't know where to start. I haven't wrote a book before, so I can't really think where to start in this journey. But then, the publishers actually reached out one day and said, well, are you interested in writing a book about, the CTA certificate? Hell yeah. But can you help me a little bit? This is my first book, and I definitely need some help, need some guidance. It's not something I've done before. So they said, yeah, well, don't worry, we're going to take care of that. And they did. So I had some really good support throughout the journey of writing this book, particularly at the beginning. With time, you start to learn, and you start, to build some habits, and you start to get, okay, this is how things will be done, and yeah, I have to put it through.
That sounds like a really rewarding experience as well, and just a real example of, if you really put your mind to something, you don't have to necessarily tackle it on your own. You've got a great idea and a great concept, something to share with everybody. The execution is, you can't be expected to do all of that yourself. It would take centuries, right? How long did it take to write?
It took something around 6 or 7 months to put it, like from A to Z. And you literally have to spend something like 2 or 3 hours every day, every night for me, every night for all these 6 or 7 months to finish, building all of these things. Because you create content, then you send it for reviews, comes back, you fix things while you're writing in the new content or the new chapter, and you go on. While you're on chapter 6, you receive some feedback on chapter 3, and you start going back and forth and adjusting things. It's it really gets interesting at that stage. But yeah, if you get the right support, things will be done.
Yeah, absolutely. So then obviously there's you mentioned that there's a lot of common things that you feel the candidates would really benefit from in their preparation, that you were finding you were repeating in your mentoring, and so on. So I mean, how has the review, obviously when did you pass the review board, first of all?
So that was January 2017.
Oh, okay, so not too long ago. So 4 years.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. And one of the things that I found when studying for the review board, I haven't passed yet. So just to be really clear, people ask me all the time, when did you become a CTA? I am not a CTA. I have not passed the review board yet, but the process of my first attempt was incredibly valuable to me as a practitioner. I was able to hold my own in conversations with IBM security guys to discuss how Salesforce would fit within their policies and so on. So all of those conversations really helped me. And they also helped me to be a bit more succinct and concise about the solutions that I want to produce. Whether that happens in public speaking or not is a completely different matter. However, tell us a bit about what you learned from your process and how you use it in your working life.
Well, thinking of my own experience, I spend a lot of time preparing for the review board, because it's a lot of efforts, and on the review board day itself, it puts a lot of mental pressure and emotional pressure on you. I was really keen to if I can get it first time, that would be fantastic. I really wanted to get it first time and then just be done with that. So I spent a lot of time in the preparations. It took me something like 3 years actually to prepare for the review board, and I started by first I had a small mock with someone to explore where are my weaknesses, where are the gaps that I have. Based on that, I worked planned my time accordingly to close the gaps, and then engaged in really intensive set of mocks eventually at the last 6 or 7 months. But throughout that journey, you learn a lot about what is expected from you on that particular day, how to phrase out a particular solution so that it's short and concise. You have a very limited time to deliver a message or to deliver a solution. How can you phrase that, frame that in a least possible words that can deliver the whole solution, or the whole part of the solution. Again, I've learned how to use the artifacts in a better way. So first, I was under the impression that these are probably artifacts that I need to create in order to pass. Eventually, I've learned that these are not supposed to be thought like that. You shouldn't be thinking of these artifacts like that. These are artifacts that you should be generating as a TA. You should be generating these artifacts as part of your day-to-day activities. And you should be using them as part of your day-to-day activity. You have to understand why you're generating these artifacts. You're not generating them because we like them, because the judges like them, or because you don't actually need these artifacts to pass the review board. But without them, you are likely to miss a lot of the areas that you need to explain in your solution. The image will tell like 1,000 words, and having your artifacts in a high quality fashion will help you to articulate your solution even without starting your presentation. Just when they look at the diagrams, oh, okay, this is how he's planning to do that. And yeah, so you're going to get some marks already. And then you can use them during your presentation in an interactive fashion to deliver that kind of engaging experience. So it's not like you're reading from a paper and you're answering a question. Again, the expectation is that this is a presentation for a CXO from the client. And it has to be engaging, it has to be interesting, it has to explain the solution with enough details to someone in that position. So you learn all of these while you are preparing for the review board. But the key part is that you have to make this part of your part of your habits, part of your day-to-day activities. That I found to be the best way actually to prepare for the review board. And again, it's what the certificate is meant for. So why Salesforce created the certificate from the beginning. They wanted to ensure that they have people who believe in these beliefs, do what they are expected to do, from this role, provide that high level of assurance to their clients, that quality, and they can, share this knowledge with the others. This is exactly what they're expecting CTA to do. And, if you build the habit of doing what is necessary to pass in your day-to-day activities, you will learn while you are working and, you're doing your day-to-day job.
And if you're client-facing, it's fairly straightforward to try and to put your hand up for those opportunities, right? So you can work on pre-sales. I found is a really interesting way to start actually building up your CTA scenario and solving it, right? But then because you still have to, but then of course you've got more constraints, because you've got budget constraints, you've got stakeholder management to consider, governance to consider, etc., and policies that exist or don't exist. So there's a level of complexity that's unknown there. But how have you found your experiences so far, both through operating as a Salesforce professional, and also coaching, mentoring candidates at that level? How have you found that has had any effect on the way that you work with customers, and if so, how does that show itself?
Yeah. Well, before I answer this question, I just want to highlight that yes, working on a client-facing role would definitely help you in putting some of these practices in action, particularly the part about articulating a solution in short set of phrases. But regardless of where you operate, even if you're not doing, a lot of the client-facing activities, you still have a lot of other activities that you can incorporate in your day-to-day job. If you are the tech lead for a particular team, you're not necessarily doing a lot of client-facing, but you are engaged, day in, day out with the details of how things are configured, and you can practice decision making. You can practice creating a decision log, and then like challenge or present that to others, and being challenged on that, or do it the other way around. So others would present their solution and then you challenge it around. This can be applied on multiple levels. Again, regardless of where you sit or what is your role within the project, there are things that you can incorporate in your day-to-day activities. Yes, you might get a better chance in some specific roles, client-facing roles, but in all other roles, don't wait until you move on to the client-facing role so that you start acting as a CTA. You can act like today. Part of that can be done at any different levels, but you just need to like build the habit of incorporating these things into day-to-day activity. You have to believe in the value of doing that. Otherwise, you're going to just feel that it's a burden. If I'm telling you that you should, for every project, you should create a data model in this and this kind of level of details, but you don't believe in that value, you're going to feel that it's a burden. So you need to understand why we need these kind of artifacts. Why do you need to create something about that describes your sharing model? There's a value, and you need to understand what is really the value that you get out of that activity and out of these artifacts.
I suppose from what I've seen, the value is that you don't have to go back and do it again later for a starting point.
yeah, that is definitely one of them. Now, to answer your question regarding how did that help me, and then changed a lot of things while working with clients. Obviously, you build a second habit. You build like a second nature in explaining particular things in a specific way, in documenting things in a specific way. In many occasions, you would engage with the clients and say, well, I'm going to create this and this and that, and then we need this kind of governance model, and we need this and we need that, and this. Well, it's not necessarily what we thought of. We have this thing. We have this kind of governance model. We have covered it in a way or a different or some different setup. So this gives you the ability to understand what they have, learn back from it, but it also gives you the ability to challenge what they have, because what the best practice is. The things that you really needed in place in order to get a successful Salesforce project into flight. So it kind of helps you drive, convince your clients, kind of your stakeholders, gonna help you with these conversations, and gonna give you that kind of assurance, the right thing, and you can help them and help them see it, kind of help navigate them through the different decisions in order to reach out to the right decision. So it really helps. It really adds a lot of background to the recommendation that you provide.
Amazing. Yeah, I completely and utterly agree with you. And when it comes, I mean, one of the things that I've been thinking about with this book is, now that someone's written the book on the CTA, is how many of these are going to fly off the shelves for everybody thinking that they can just read a book and then they'll become a CTA. What's your message for those very enthusiastic, wonderful people?
Well, it's in order to pass the review board, the book would help, but you still need to do a lot of other things. You still need a lot of experience, practical experience, hands-on experience. So whenever we're talking about a particular functionality or a particular feature in Salesforce, you have to practice configuring that by hand and experiencing how it actually works, preferably within a project, because that's where you get real life challenges. But even if not, like at least try in a vanilla setup. So when we're talking about single sign-on, it's not enough to read the flows. You have to read the flows. You have to remember them like the back of your hand. You have to be able to draw them and explain each and every step on them. But you also have to practice doing that. So you have to go and set these up in some test environment, observe how it operates, and play around with it to figure out how things are ticking around. This will help you understand the real details, not only just memorize the flows themselves. So you need the experience. You need to practice more. So in the book, I've introduced 2 full mock scenarios. In reality, you probably need to do between 5 to 9 or 10 different mocks, full mocks, before you can go to the review board. Now, again, and this is something that is. I had some discussion with other CTAs. Some believe that there is value of attending the review board, even if you don't necessarily have everything in place. Like, you're not sure that you're gonna pass. You're probably 70% sure that you have a chance. So you can go and experience. It will give you some value. It will the experience itself will help you learn new things. Personally, I think
burn your bank account though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, personally, I think that it's better to prepare well before you go or you attempt the review board. It's just, but it's just me. Like, again, I feel the mental pressure and the whole stress mood that you get in that experience. It's not something that people enjoy doing multiple times. So, like, if you had to, then fine, you had to, but don't go unprepared. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, 100% agree. I found on my review board, I got I think I overthought the whole thing. I spent so much time focusing on everything being right on the day, that things that I had spent months practicing and had off pat, I then spent I actually made more mistakes on the things I knew well than I did on the things that I was less confident on, if that makes sense. Because I spent so much time overthinking integration to make sure that I could convey my points correctly, that actually my solution architecture fell out the bottom. And actually, solution architecture is my strength in real life. So, that was a surprising outcome, but nevertheless an extremely valuable one.
Well, to your point, Gemma, there is in each of the full mock scenarios, there's always one or more requirements which are more tricky than the others, and without enough practice, you might feel you might experience being thrown a little bit off rails when you come across these particular requirements. I've observed that with some of my mentees. They're real brilliant candidates and they know their stuff, but when they come across these kind of challenges, they start to overthink, as you described. They start to overthink about a particular thing, and should I do it this way, should I do it that way?
I do that.
Yeah, and eventually they lose time. If they lose time, they will feel under pressure to deliver the rest of the scenario, which contains probably things that they can deliver. They know very well they can deliver, but because of the time pressure, they end up, delivering something that is not really solid, and that not necessarily can stand in the review board. So this is why, having a plan up ahead before going to the review board, and building a plan that suits you. Again, this is, everyone will have his or her own plan for the review board. So you have to practice and practice more with mocks, so that you build your own plan, you build your own understanding of exactly how you want to divide your time and how you want to deal with these situations. Should I, simply ignore this requirement? I'm going to lose one requirement. I'm going to lose, a few points. Maybe this is your strategy. I'm going to focus on something else, or maybe I'm just, I'm just going to use a simple solution with an assumption to help me with that, and I'm just going to navigate my way through. again, you need to work out your own strategy, your own time plan, and then stick to it. And if I would add another domain to the certificate, I would call it time management. It's extremely, extremely important. And it can make the whole experience either smooth or really tough for you. Because if you feel that the time pressure, that's going to impact a lot of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember it well. Well, thank you for answering all my questions. I just wanted to open it up to the guys and girls on the call. If they wanted to ask any questions of Tameem at all, please fire ahead. Come off mute. Okay. Always happens, doesn't it? No, but it's fine, because I have some prepared. Well, actually, I have one final question for you. What's the best piece of advice that any one of your mentors on any topic in the world gave to you that you pass on to your mentees?
Right. This is interesting. Let me think about it a moment.
Put you on the spot there.
So that's yeah. This is really interesting. I think one of the key messages, again, it's something that I mentioned earlier, which is the fact that it's the activities that you need to do in order to pass the review board are not really just that. It's something that should become part of your day-to-day habits, day-to-day job. You have to do this, and you have to believe in doing this, and that will be very important. The other part was about the time management part. Again, this is something I practiced with other candidates when we were preparing, and it really helps a lot when you present just for the sake of time management. So I've had occasions where I presented, the solution itself wasn't new. Like the scenario wasn't new, the solution wasn't really something very difficult. All my focus was about getting the presentation in the right time based on the plan that I had in my mind. So I allocated this amount of time for this activity. I'm going to spend 3 minutes explaining this. I'm going to spend 2 minutes explaining that, and then you practice and practice that more and more, and you eventually manage to do it. Eventually, you build a habit to stick to that time, and build a habit to check the time every now and then. And on the day of the review board, you can just stick to your plan and wow your audience. They will like it. They will love it if they felt that you are sticking to a particular plan and you're moving in a particular organized manner when you're presenting.
Absolutely. Well, Tameem, thank you so much for your time today. We'll call it there. It's been a lovely 40 minutes talking to you about the book, and I'm wishing you all the very best for the future and its success. I'm sure it will be absolutely fantastic. And thank you for joining Ladies Be Architects. I'm going to end the recording just now.